You know, we're surrounded by them every single day. Google, Pepsi, Nike. They're way more than just logos, right? They're cultural icons. But if you ever stop to wonder how a simple idea gets to be that powerful, it's not just some spark of creative genius. Nope. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden science of branding, from the boardroom battles all the way to the design breakthroughs. Okay, let's just start with a major reality check from brand expert Danny Altmann. He says, get this, naming is 20% creative and 80% political. I mean, that's a pretty wild idea, isn't it? We tend to imagine branding as this magical, artistic thing, but the real work, the really heavy lifting, that happens a long way from any design studio.
80%. Just let that sink in for a second. That's the amount of time spent in meetings, navigating different egos, and just building a rock-solid case for a name that everybody can actually get behind. It's all about convincing a room full of very important people that your idea isn't just creative, it's a smart business move. It is a marathon of persuasion, not a sprint of creativity. So where does this marathon even begin? Well, it starts with one of the most brutal challenges in the entire business, finding the perfect name. So welcome to the Naming Gauntlet.
And believe me, this is not about brainstorming a cool name over a cup of coffee. No way. We are talking about a process where experts generate hundreds, sometimes even thousands of options, and every single one of them gets put through the ringer. Because a name isn't just a label. It's a piece of intellectual property that has to work on so many different levels.
And this is the gauntlet that every single name has to run. Does it tell the right story? Does it accidentally mean something, kind of weird or offensive in another language? Can you even legally own it? And then, of course, the final boss of the internet age, can you get the domain and the social handles? Most potential names, they don't even make it past the stage. And what's really amazing is how many iconic brands didn't actually start with their famous names. I mean, can you imagine backrubbing something instead of Googling it or cracking open a can of Brad's drink? It just goes to show you that a name change can be an absolute game changer, completely shifting a brand's entire destiny. So, when you boil it all down, all that hard work, the legal checks, the language analysis, it really all comes down to this one question. Does the name set the stage for a great story? Because that's really what a name is. It's the title of the book that you're about to write. All right, so once you have the name, you have to give it a face. This is where we get into forging the visual identity. You know, the part of the brand that we all recognize in just a split second. I loved this way of putting it. Think of a logo as a typographic portrait. It's the visual shorthand for literally everything a company is and everything it wants to be. It's their face, their signature, their soul, all wrapped up in one little mark. And this quote from the absolute legend, Paula Scher, it just hits the nail on the head. It reminds us that simplicity is so deceptive. What looks totally effortless is actually the result of decades of experience. It's about distilling a whole lifetime of learning into one single perfect mark. Okay, so how does this actually work in the real world? Let's take a closer look at the design process for the Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center, which was created by the amazing team at Hornell Anderson. So the very first step for the designers was to just dive headfirst into the world of cancer research. And you can see that in these early concepts, right? They're pulling inspiration from the data, the research itself, even from what cell cultures look like under a microscope. They were searching for a visual metaphor for the science. And then they had their aha moment. A scientist casually mentioned that their work is all about looking for a moment of change. That one single instant when a cell starts to behave differently. That one phrase, that became the beating heart of the entire design. And here it is, the beautiful result. The designers took the H from Hutch, and that little connector piece right in the middle, that became the visual symbol of that moment of change. It's just a perfect marriage of strategy and story. A logo that isn't just elegant, but is profoundly meaningful. But look, a great brand is so much more than just a name and a logo. You have to build an entire world around it. You have to create a distinct look and feel that's just instantly recognizable. Michael Bierut, who is another design legend, gives us the ultimate test for any brand identity. The goal is to create a visual language that is so unique, so specific, that you'd recognize the brand even if you covered up the logo. It's about owning a style, not just a symbol. And here is that exact idea in action. These posters for New York's Public Theater are a total masterclass in this approach. Even though the content is always changing, that bold, in-your-face typography is so distinctive, you just know it's the public before you ever even see their logo. Here's another fantastic example of building a whole grand world. For the company T-Box, designers built a complete system. They used this really sophisticated palette of colors, custom type, and unique patterns, all to create a feeling of affordable luxury. It just elevates the simple act of drinking tea into a really special experience.
And what's so smart about this system is that it's not just beautiful, it's also incredibly functional. T-Box uses specific colors to separate black tea from green tea from white tea, and so on. It's such a clever way to guide the customer and make a pretty complex product line feel simple and intuitive.
But the most powerful brands, the truly iconic ones, they don't just stop at what we see. They create a complete sensory experience that engages us on a much deeper, more emotional level.
Think about it. We experience brands through sound all the time, a lot of times without even realizing it. That iconic Intel jingle, the unmistakable roar of a Harley-Davidson engine, even that nostalgic "You've Got Mail" notification from AOL. Sound is an incredibly powerful and often subconscious branding tool.
And this is more important now than ever before. As Professor Scott Galloway points out, voice technology is a massive disruptor. When you just say, "Alexa, order batteries," the visual part of the brand can completely disappear from the equation. In this new world, sound and voice are the next great branding frontier.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here? Well, as Philip Durbrow says, it doesn't matter if we're talking about the name, the logo, the color, or the sound. Every single piece has to work together in harmony. They all have to serve to tell one single, powerful, and sustainable story. That is the soul of a great brand.
So that leaves us with one final question for you. The next time you see a logo or hear a jingle, just pause and look a little closer. Think about all the tiny choices that went into it. What story is that brand really telling you?